This is the Uyuni Salt Flats, home to the world's largest lithium mineral deposits. It is part of the lithium triangle that sits between Bolivia, Chile, and Argentina. The area accounts for 70% of the global lithium reserves, and while it looks serene now, it will be stripped to the bone in the near future. Lithium is a crucial material in the transition to renewable energy technologies, so in a few decades, the salt flats could look like this or worse. Some of the biggest investors in the lithium triangle are Chinese companies. They have substantial stakes, but that is only the tip of the iceberg. Zooming out from the map, and China's footprint is everywhere, from financial assistance to construction projects to space-based surveillance. Beijing is opening up new avenues rapidly. As of 2020, China's total trade with South America sits at $307 billion, while that of the United States is $156 billion. China's numbers have grown 26-fold over the last 2 decades and are expected to reach $700 billion by 2035. This trend hammers home how the United States has lost ground in a region long seen as its backyard. And while for the longest time South America was out of sight, out of mind, now that China gazes at the continent, slowly making its own, the world takes notice. Working on videos as controversial as ours comes with many security risks. That's why I use PIA, the sponsor of today's video. PIA is the world's most transparent VPN provider. It hides my IP address and encrypts my internet connection. No one, including ISP operators, network administrators, and government censors, can access my PC. Plus, when using PIA, web browsing is made safer and faster since the app also blocks ads, trackers, and malicious websites. But there's more. PIA has 50 servers in 50 US states, so when I want to make it look like I'm in Alabama, there's an IP for that. As you probably know, the new Formula 1 season has started, and PIA can help you watch the races for free as well as protecting yourselves while online. PIA has over 30 million downloads. It's available for all platforms, and it can be used to protect up to 10 devices simultaneously. Using our link, you can grab an 83% discount on PIA. That's about $2 a month, and you also get 4 extra months completely for free. Try it now. PIA has a 30-day money-back guarantee if you're not satisfied with the product. Never in the history of the world has there been a situation so bad that a government can't make worse. South America should know. Divisive politics, economic inequality, environmental pollution, and rampant violence, to name just a few. South America, however, is also a place of business and opportunity. The continent is rich in cash crops, irrigated crops, livestock, forestry, fishing, base metals, precious minerals, hydrocarbons, hydropower, and for what it's worth, the illicit drug trade. In fact, South America is so rich in natural resources that it suffers from a phenomenon called the resource curse. Much of the local framework is export-based, leaving domestic markets in shambles. Local economies face inadequate infrastructure, limited access to capital markets, and a lack of skilled labor. For authoritarian China, South America is also a unique place, a place with a deep history of like-minded authoritarianism. These conditions make the continent an ideal space for investment. You see, when China makes deals, it likes to settle on long-term contracts, preferably with government-owned businesses, since those are deemed more reliable. China also considers existing government institutions when investing capital. South America has institutions that are just strong enough to enforce contracts, but not too ethical that they may uphold more idealistic values such as labor laws, human rights violations, and crack down on predatory economic practices. Plus, most South American governments are presidential systems, where the president is the chief executive. For Chinese lawmakers, that means they don't have to go through levels of bureaucracy, they can instead negotiate directly with the head of state. Beijing has an agnostic viewpoint. It doesn't care how others handle things within their country. It certainly doesn't care if they're authoritarian or democratic. It just wants to do business. And business has been good. Today, China is South America's largest trading partner. In Chile, trade with China makes up 34% of the total trade. This is followed by 28% in Brazil and Peru, 20% in Uruguay, 19% in Ecuador, 18% in Colombia and Paraguay, and 14% in Bolivia and Argentina. China's leading partner, however, is Venezuela. It serves as a beachfront for Chinese investors. Caracas has taken 17 loans, totaling an amount of $62 billion. Much of the funding has been set aside for oil exploration and extraction. But the sum is so extensive that critics say Venezuela is walking straight into a debt trap. Using its lobbying power in Venezuela, China joined the Inter-American Development Bank in 2008 and then joined the Caribbean Development Bank a year later. In both instances, China entered as a voting member. Already, efforts are paying off, but China isn't done yet. In Ecuador, Beijing has provided over $18 billion in loans to various infrastructure projects, including the Coca-Cola Sinclair hydroelectric dam. That is a lot of money for Ecuador. The interests for the hydroelectric dam alone is $125 million a year. Now it just so happens that Ecuador is negotiating with China on a free trade agreement. Meanwhile, in Bolivia, China has so far invested $3 billion, but that sum will surge in the coming years. Bolivian state-run companies recently signed a deal with Chinese conglomerate CBC worth more than $1 billion to explore and extract lithium deposits. That sum, $1 billion, is a symbolic gesture, a handsome start in an industry that will grow in the tens of billions. At the same time, in Chile, China has put in about $13 billion over the years to buy stakes in local power grids, healthcare facilities, road and rail tracks, etc. Chile's long coastline by the Pacific makes it an ideal, if not strategic place for Chinese foreign direct investment. On the other end of the continent, in Brazil, lawmakers have taken a dozen loans totaling an amount of $30 billion, most of it going to electricity generation projects, followed by oil and gas operations. In recent years, China has shifted its focus to logistics and tech. For instance, in 2017, Chinese conglomerate CMPC purchased 90% of Paranaguá Port, the largest commercial port in the country. While in 2021, Huawei, Hikvision, and ZTE provided surveillance tools with facial recognition capabilities to the most populous city in Brazil, São Paulo. As these technologies are integrated into Brazil's infrastructure, there will be no going back. Chinese entities will be able to dictate the terms for commerce and technology for future generations in this part of the world. Still more, in Argentina, there are 13 outstanding loans for a total of $17 billion. Chinese companies operate in all sorts of local industries, but mostly in construction, mining, and agriculture. But the $17 billion sum invested thus far could very well more than double in the coming years. Argentina is strapped for cash, and in 2022 it signed an investment deal with China worth nearly $24 billion. Yeah, things are changing. But all these financial commitments, as impressive as they are, have a cost. Sometimes that cost goes beyond monetary norms. Through its network of embassies, companies, and quasi-governmental entities, each tailored to individual aims, Beijing has constructed a soft power machine for itself. Using that soft power, China has coerced some local governments into unequal partnerships. But China's interest in South America goes beyond geoeconomics. Beijing is also working to secure the future of its military influence. Near Lima in Peru, COSCO Shipping and the Peruvian military are constructing the Chancay port at a cost of $450 million. It will be the region's first large-scale multi-purpose base of its kind, one that could be swiftly repurposed from civilian to military ends. To the south is the Despacio de Jana station in Neuquén, Argentina. The station is part of China's deep space network that is used for interplanetary spacecraft missions. From this base, China is able to conduct aerospace surveillance and intercept long-range signals. Up north sits the El Sombrero space base in Venezuela. From here, China has launched satellites into orbit trajectories that are otherwise unreachable from its mainland. Plus, since 2005, China has built a series of ground control stations on site which keep track of the thousands of satellites and objects in Earth's orbit. China has a total of 11 ground control bases spread across South America. Their exact missions or capabilities are unknown. The facilities likely have both science and military goals at heart. Either way, China's expanding hold on South America is a force to be reckoned with, like a tidal wave of investment that sweeps nations off their feet. Beijing not only talks the talk, but walks the walk, offering tangible benefits for those who align with its agenda. America's response to all these developments so far has been tepid at best. Part of the reason is ideology. American public opinion is less passionate about free trade than it once was. Plus, the United States inherently opposes left-leaning socialist governments. It makes for complicated politics in the US Senate. As luck would have it, much of South America is made up precisely of those left-leaning socialist governments, and seen from their angle, working with the United States is difficult to reconcile politically. So, with no way to sway public opinion, the Americans have chosen to step back from South American affairs. Instead, they look at things from a distance, believing that time and circumstances will change and that China will make a careless mistake. Synthesizing the key points, Washington clings to the notion of American exceptionalism, convinced that its Monroe Doctrine will prevail, much like a captain who believes his vessel to be unsinkable. I've been your host Shirvan from Caspian Report. We've got some new perks on our Patreon platform. You can now download all original maps, go over the sources in the PDF files, or join the conversations in Discord. Check out the link in the description to learn more. Thank you for watching, and Saul.